on May 31st, and you'll see how long this is from the beginning of the whole situation, where I'm sure there were a few women who said, you know, wait a second, this doesn't seem right, when they finally figured out what was going on and they wanted to get hired and trained and get on the road and start making some money, and they finally would hear from Prime's recruiters, well, you know, I'd like to, but we don't have any female drivers. And then if they're like Miss Deanna, they would say, I don't care, I'm an adult, I can drive with a man, I just want a job. And if these women, each one of them back in 2003, maybe had filed charges, or if the EEOC had picked them up, I don't know. But maybe we could have stopped it earlier. The point being, and the point I'll keep coming back to, is that we have to, when we think that we're being discriminated against, you have rights, but you only have those rights in as much as you really educate yourself on them and hold employers and the government accountable. So we ended up getting $3.1 million for 63 women, and it was a long, long fight. It meant a lot of weekends calling women and getting hung up on, trying to find a class of women. And one thing I learned, a lot of this is just an education for me, is that when you want to know about women in trucking, you want real women in trucking. I made a mistake and I went to a different organization first because I didn't know. And so then I found Desiree, and she was awesome. And yeah, so we got women who, you know, came forward, and I was able to put together a class. So, okay.
Can you mention very quickly, you got an expert testimony?
Oh, right. And what? Remind me of her name.
Ellen Voie.
So Ellen Voie, she is one of the people I've spoken to, and actually I had spoken to her on another huge case I had, that we were trying to help women get into trucking and not in, and I was telling the company things like, because I would just push for whatever I thought we could get. Oh, I think it would be great if you made them, you know, if you paid for child care for those women, that would help them get into the industry. I was pushing for whatever. You know, it's settlement time, you try for everything. And I didn't get it, but I thought it would be helpful. Anyway, so working with Ellen Voie of the Women in Trucking, which is all I knew then, she was talking to me about what she thought women needed, but I didn't know anything about her organization. So then I called her when we started the Prime case, and she, you know, she said, okay, I'll let people know about this. And I didn't hear anything from her until we got to the back pay stage. And turns out Ms. Voie is actually someone who works much more closely and happily with the employers in the large trucking firms. And she was an expert witness against the women in this case, because what we were trying to prove is that they should get back pay. They didn't get a job they should have gotten, and the only reason was because of their gender, and therefore if they made $20,000 but they would have made $50,000, they should get $30,000. That's what we were trying to do. Ellen decides that she's going to help Prime out, and I got to depose her, and her whole deposition was basically, if those women had wanted jobs, they would have just had to go down the street because there's plenty of jobs, so they shouldn't get any back pay. So that's women in trucking. And yeah, we didn't use them anymore. And of course she's like, well, you thought I was an expert, didn't you? I'm like, yeah, not for long. So yeah, so she testified against the women. And here's the basic things that the EEOC does cover. And I, like I said, I will disagree a little bit, but I will do it with a caveat because I'm a lawyer. Unfair treatment because of your race, color, religion, sex. Now, what we said on it's still there. I'm absolutely surprised by this, but what we have on our what we were told and what we have on our EEOC.gov site is including pregnancy, gender identity, and sexual orientation, and we can come back to that a little. National origin, age, disability, or genetic information. You can't be harassed by coworkers or anybody else in your workplace because of your race, color, religion, sex, including all those things, or age, disability, or genetic information. You can't be denied a reasonable workplace accommodation that you need because of your religious belief or disability. So that's Title VII and ADA. You can't be retaliated against because you complained about the job discrimination. Okay, so I'd like to talk a little bit about the law that most people know about and what it protects you. What rights do you have under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act? It's basically what started the EEOC. That was the commission was put into place then. Okay, so if you have not been hired or promoted, or if you've been harassed, demoted, or terminated based on gender/gender stereotyping, race, religion, or national origin, you will be protected under Title VII. The harassment can be same-sex harassment. It can be any employment practice or policy. So, for instance, Prime same-sex training policy resulted in a qualified female applicant simply because of her gender being treated differently than a qualified male applicant. I kind of want to get into the whole gender stereotyping because I know it's hard to explain what's going on in EEOC. So when I worked there for the first 14 years I'd say, we were told Title VII does not cover sexual orientation or transgender status. There are at least 5 to 6, 7 of the lawyers who kept saying, but I'm doing on my own time research here and I'm seeing that the courts are opening up a little bit about Title VII coverage because we couldn't take cases that the court said they wouldn't do anything with them. And long story short, at the time I left, we were supposed to be telling people, as in our investigators were supposed to take charges on gender stereotyping, including sexual orientation discrimination and transgender status. Let me tell you what I do know personally. I filed one of the first 2 transgender discrimination cases. My client is always EEOC, so it's a little hard to talk about it. The woman that we represented in this lawsuit was transitioning from male to female at her job. She started presenting as male. During the time she worked there, she was transitioning. I can't remember if she was, I think she was taking hormones and she was dressing female using makeup and so forth. Basically the HR person said, you know, what the hell, what's going on here? And she said, you know, I'm glad you asked me because this is what's happening. I'm transitioning and I will be, I am female. I did change my license. My name is Brandy and so forth. Okay. So at that time, again, this is a very typical discrimination case. They said, oh, by the way, you're not selling enough hearing aids and we just can't use you anymore. So we filed that case, and believe me, I've never had so many people look at a complaint that I filed, which is really sort of almost like you file it every time you file a case. It's not the biggest deal. But I mean, every single person in the EEOC that had any clout at all, and I was down here and they were way up in Washington, looked at the complaint, looked at our press release, was just always on top of that because it was a big thing. And we filed this lawsuit. We didn't litigate much because the employer settled it. So Brandy was awarded $150,000, which it was a very small employer and would have usually had a cap of $50,000. So that was a very good settlement for her. Now, unfortunately, things don't always stay the same. At the same time we filed against Lakeland Eye Clinic, there was another case that EEOC filed against a funeral home. And the person was, again, transitioning or had transitioned and was presenting as female, was wearing, it was very conservative, so she had to wear a suit, but she was wearing a skirt and a suit. And basically what happened there is what we were concerned about, because federal courts are kind of tough on these cases a lot of times, and they change very slowly, and it was, the case there was dismissed on summary judgment, like we talked about, because the defendant said we had the religious exemption and we should be able to fire somebody who doesn't follow our religious tenets. And that's a pretty iffy, religious exemption isn't supposed to be this big. It's supposed to be very seldom that they can use that. Anyway, it would have been a very interesting case because it was up in the appellate court. People are learning about the appellate court from Donald Trump now. So basically, you know, we lost. Okay, that happens a lot. You know, you lose and that happens. But we're trying to make new law. We're trying to say this Title VII does cover transgender. It is a part of sexual stereotyping. If I say a woman looks like this and a man looks like this, a woman wears this and a man wears that, that's sexual stereotyping. There's a case that is directly on point. It was written by the Supreme Court in the 1980s, and it wasn't transgender, but it was basically saying that this woman was not given a accounting position, a partnership, because she didn't wear lipstick and high heels, and I would have never gotten anywhere. And the point being that you can't do that. It's sex stereotyping. So we said, you know, EEOC filed a lawsuit. We said that they were sex stereotyping and that she should have, not even whether she was discriminated against, that really wasn't the point yet. We were just saying we should be able to try to give you evidence, and then they give evidence, and you decide who wins. And we got kicked out immediately before we got that far. How does politics change things? Politics change things. I don't know how the decision was made, nor anything else. I do know that we pulled out of that appeal with the change of administration. So I can tell you that things do change and politics do matter.